And our first guest, the lovely woman, I met her for the first time 10 minutes ago, Marlo Thomas, four-time Emmy Award winner, right? She's a producer, she's an activist, and she's an author with many gifted people of a new book which is already on the hardcover bestseller list. It is called Free to Be a Family. Let's have a nice welcome for Marlo Thomas. I get extra for that, Mike and Marlo. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Thanks.
Have to go a long way to talk to you now.
I know, in all these years.
Be able to wave at you in the park, but no more.
Jogging around the park. How's the family?
Great, great. Very, very getting larger. My brother just had a new little baby. So.
How many people? You've written a book, Free to Be a Family, which follows by many years a highly acclaimed book.
Free to Be You and Me,
which is about the individual spirit.
That's right.
Before we talk specifically about the book, and it's a wonderful book, I want to talk about the size of your family. You know, I didn't realize until I started to read a little bit about you, you had a lot of brothers and sisters.
Well, no, I have one brother.
One brother.
One brother, one sister, and then they each have my brother has 3 kids, my sister has 2. But my father's one of 10, and my mother's one of 5.
Right. So there's a lot of aunts,
millions of aunts and uncles and cousins, and then, of course, I have 5 stepchildren. So there are a lot of people to deal with. Christmas is a nightmare at our house. But,
how is Danny Thomas?
He's great.
Does he still smoke those lungs?
Yes, absolutely.
You gotta get him to stop that.
No, he doesn't really inhale or anything, and he's very healthy, knock wood. He's 75 years old, and he plays golf, and he runs around all over the country, you know, getting money for St. Jude Hospital. And we're going to go to Turkey this spring and make a movie together for CBS.
Have you worked much with your dad over the years?
Just pretend, you know, like he would do a walk-on on That Girl, or I would do a walk-on on one of his specials, but we've never really worked in anything, you know, serious.
What is somebody, but if I just say, make room for Daddy,
yes,
what comes to mind?
My father singing Daddy's Little Girl to somebody else. And also, you know, being embarrassed, something would happen at home, and then we'd turn on the television set, and there it was on television.
On TV, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was, and I would always say, everybody's going to know it's me, you know, and my father would say, no, nobody, never.
No, there was a time when, I guess, kind of a counterpart, Lucy Arnaz and Desi Arnaz Jr. were actually on the Lucy show.
Yeah.
Was that a secret, like, ambition? Like, why can't my father put me on his sitcom?
No.
No?
No, I had much bigger ideas. I wanted my own show.
And you got it, right?
Yes. No, I didn't really ever want to be on his show. When he worked with Margaret O'Brien when I was a little girl, when I was like around 7, I was very jealous of Margaret O'Brien, and I wanted to be her, and I wanted to be in all those movies with my father. But the series looked like a lot of hard work, you know. It was just every day he went there, you know. It was different. I could see right away.
Margaret O'Brien is the first girl I ever remember having a crush on.
Oh,
It was like my little secret.
Oh, yes.
I think I was 8 or 9 years old. I used to see her in the movies.
I know. And I hated her. I just hated her because she was always doing a movie with my father.
I wish I had known you then.
That's right. I was available.
So was I. What happened? Well, I was in Philadelphia.
You know, 2 ships crossing in the night.
Oh, well, another talk show host got her. What can I say?
That's right.
I read something which I thought was quite interesting and kind of brave of you to say, and it gets us back into Free to Be a Family, and that is that one of the reasons why for a long time you postponed marriage is that because of your mother, because of the image that your mother kind of set out for you, the fact that she gave her entire life to you 3 children.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my mother was a singer, you know, on the radio, and she...
And Dad used to be the announcer.
Yes, and he was the announcer, and my mother has a beautiful voice to this day, and she had given up her career to have us, and also to travel with my father. In those days, he was in nightclub business, and so they'd go back and forth from Chicago to Detroit and so forth, looking for, you know, nightclub work. And so my mother was on the road. She couldn't really hold down a job and also accompany him on the road. And that was her decision. And I know she's regretted it a little bit. She hasn't regretted, you know, her family, but she's regretted that she couldn't have done both. And she always encouraged me and my sister and brother to go out and get what we wanted. And she never really pushed us into getting married. You know, she would talk about it a little bit because she wants her kids to have everything. But there was always, you know, well, now you're really getting it now. You know, she really wanted us to stay in there. And I think that I thought, or I got the misconception, I don't think it's true anymore, but at that time it was true, that a woman could not be married and be a good wife and a good mother, and that in fact you'd be a really bad wife and a bad mother, which means being a bad woman. And who the heck wants to be a bad woman, you know? So I just said, well, it's not possible, so I won't do it.
I won't get married.
I won't do it for now. You know, nobody ever makes a final decision. I won't do it.
Never say never.
Yeah, right. You know, I won't do it. I'll wait. And it was becoming more and more apparent that there really weren't the possibilities of men who wanted me to have what I wanted as much as they wanted it for themselves, and as much as we women have been trained to want it for men, do you know? I mean, women are really raised to believe that it's very much a part of the male ego, you know, the male life, to have a career, to have work in order to be a man. But nobody thinks that about women.
But I don't think we're still raising women exactly that way anymore. I think things have changed. I think we're seeing much different examples than your mother set for you right now.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. But if the men don't change, the women can't change all by themselves. I mean, the men have to change too. The little boys have to see that it's a wonderful thing that their mothers express themselves and not feel that something is being taken away from them if their mother isn't home all the time, so that they won't expect that when they grow up. I mean, it's a known thing that if your mother works, then you won't feel it strange and you won't feel deprived if your wife works.
My mother went to work when I was around 11 or 12, and I've said this many times, I was happy. Because man, I could come home.
That's right.
I have the house to myself. I could be a total slob, you know, before anything happened.
Yes.
Well, what was there 7 years ago? I guess you married Phil 7 years ago. What was there about Phil Donahue, who was a very public person, that privately reassured you that you could put the ring on the finger and not have the terror that, or whatever the negative bias was against marriage?
Well, he understands it. I mean, he definitely intellectually has the entire concept that men and women are equal.
Intellectual is one thing, but the feelings.
Yeah, but he doesn't totally have it in the gut, which he is willing to admit. And it's very hard for any man who was raised, I see the men nodding, for any man who was raised in the 40s and 50s to have it in the gut. It's not their fight, it's been our fight, and it's hard to explain it, to have them get it. But he has it now, and he's a fair human being. So it's really Phil's sense of fair play that gave me the reassurance that I would be able to say, that's not fair. Do you know why?
And
you know, don't you see why?
Yes.
Don't you see why that's not fair? I mean, when you go off to do this thing with your work, when you go off to Russia, you know, when you go off to Seattle, whenever you go off anywhere to do your work, I don't say, what do you mean you're going away for a week? You know, because I think, gee, how great, what a great opportunity for you, because I was raised to believe that his work, you know, my mother used to say, Daddy's coming home, he's had a very rough day, now don't tell him, you know, that you killed the cat and pinned it to the wall. Or,
put the cat in the oven.
Right, or all the things that we had done all day long. We were always saving it to make home nice for Daddy, because Daddy worked very hard, which he had. But, you know, my father never said, look, your mother's had a real rough day in the house with you kids, so let's be nice this evening.
It's a different story. And I see the women shaking their heads. You were a little nervous on the eve of your wedding, or on the day of your wedding. Is that not correct?
Oh, I was a wreck. Are you serious?
It took Danny Thomas to kind of...
Oh, yes. Who told you this?
Tell us that. Just tell us.
My husband told you this,
No, I know the story. Just tell us the story. It's a good one.
Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, I was a wreck. And, you know, after having waited my whole life to get married, you can imagine this was not something that came very naturally to me. And we got married into my parents' home. So we weren't a lot of people. Anyway, I was doing my hair for like 3.5 hours. I just couldn't get myself organized. I was just a wreck.
Right.
And so I was throwing everybody out, then I was begging them to come back in. I was just, you know, I said to my sister, leave me alone, I have to be by myself. And then I'd yell, come in here, why aren't you with me? You know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So finally my father came in the room and I said, I don't want to do this. This is a giant mistake. I don't know what I'm thinking of. Marriage is not for me. I'm just crazy. I should never have decided to do this. And my father said to me, what the hell do I care whether you get married or not? You know?
We're going to be back with more with Marlo Thomas right after this. All right, Marlo Thomas and friends have put together a book called Free to Be a Family. I think you got just some very nice friends: Gloria Steinem, Letty Cotton Pogrebin, Kurt Vonnegut, Whoopi Goldberg.
Lily Tomlin.
Tell us about the book. What were you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to accomplish?
Well, the first Free to Be You and Me was about the individual, and this one is about belonging, all kinds of belonging, belonging to your family, and seeing family everywhere. Kurt Vonnegut says in the afterword of the book that if we as a people could start seeing each other as relatives, all of us on the planet, that we would have a better chance at peace, we'd have a better chance at less violence, we'd just have a better chance of really getting along in the world. And it so touched me. It's such a true idea. But all of the stories in the book are about the different kinds of family, you know. The American family has changed so totally. It isn't just a mom and a dad and 2 kids and a dog named Spot. It can be, you know, a mom and a dad and then another dad and then 3 or 4 grandmothers and kids from different families and a Korean step kid and all kinds of different kinds of situations.
And the nanny, for example, if you have a situation with young children and 2 people going out to work, there's somebody's taking care of them. Hopefully, it's a relative, a loving person who's part of that family. If not,
absolutely,
it's a new member of the family.
Or you have a grandma that takes care of you, or a woman that's not really your grandma, but she feels like your grandma because she takes care of you. Then that's your grandma. That's family. And I think that we have sort of suppressed children, you know, made them feel that if they didn't have a family that looked just like a family in a book, that something was wrong with their family and they were ashamed of it. I mean, I was ashamed of my family when I was little because, because my father traveled all the time, and so whenever there was a father-daughter day, I didn't have one. Do you know? I mean, every kid wants to have what everybody else has, and I used to go along with this girlfriend of mine and her father, because her father was always in town. So he would say, "I'll be your daddy today," and I used to think to myself, I don't want you to be my daddy today.
Did you ever tell your father that?
Oh, sure. I used to write little notes to my father about it, you know, and say, you know, that how much I missed him and how ashamed I was to show up without him, and could he call, and sometimes he'd send a letter, and it was very hard for me, but he was out making a living, and I understood that. I knew that he loved me, but I felt weird.
Yeah,
I felt weird about it.
What I was going to say was what comes through in the book is that friend of yours who had the father who was always home probably felt something was weird about her family, too.
Oh, of course, that's just it. You never get away. I mean, it's like Gloria Steinem talks in the book about how ashamed she was of the house she lived in. She lived in like a mobile home, a trailer home, and she was ashamed of it. You know, but I knew kids in my neighborhood who were ashamed of their big house. You're ashamed of a little house, you're ashamed of a big house, you're ashamed if your mother isn't home, you're ashamed if your mother is home. You know, if your mother works,
what do we do to get people over this intrinsic sense of shame?
Well, what we're trying to say with this book is that whatever your family looks like, whatever it is, it's a right family. It's your family. If you love it and it loves you, that's a family. That's all a family is. It's like marriage, you know. People defined marriages in ways that nobody could meet up to. So a lot of people just said, well, I can't do that. But once you realize that marriage could be any definition you wanted it to be, you could make your own marriage and design it yourself, it became a loving, roomy place. I think it's the same thing with family.
How does your marriage to Phil Donahue, with 5 stepchildren that you've got, not follow any conventional form that may have existed in your head when you were 30 years old?
Well, first of all, I mean, the first 6 years with Phil, we commuted. You know, he lived in Chicago and I lived in Los Angeles, and we commuted every weekend.
But that can be kind of romantic.
Well, my mother said it'll last forever this way. but a lot of people thought that was very unconventional and said, well, what are you getting married if you're not going to live together?
But you felt married. I mean,
of course you were married.
What would be a typical Friday night on such a commute?
Flying, you know, we would be flying. Friday night's the night you fly.
All right, how about what would have been in those days a typical happy Saturday for you and Phil?
Saturday, well, we just would, you know, we'd get up late, we'd be romantic, we'd take walks in the snow in Winnetka, Illinois.
In L.A.?
In Winnetka. No, I lived in New York and he lived in Winnetka, Illinois. And we would take walks and then we'd see friends in the evening. We really treasured our time. And it's made us treasure our time now. I mean, Sunday is a day we never really had because on Sunday somebody had to fly back. So Sunday's like this huge, long day now.
You're both living in New York
now we
together.
live in New York together, and we very much treasure our time. And my stepchildren, this book is not just about step families. It's about all kinds of families. It's about sibling rivalry. There's a wonderful little poem in here that Judith Viors wrote about sibling rivalry. It's called Some Things Don't Make Any Sense at All. My mom says I'm her sugar plum. My mom says I'm her lamb. My mom says I'm completely perfect just the way I am. My mom says I'm a super special, wonderful, terrific little guy. My mom just had another baby. Why?
Would you read something else? Well,
you know, I think what's great about that is that children have these feelings and they don't know where to put them. They don't know how to talk about them. I mean, a new baby comes into the family and everybody says, oh, what a blessed event. Isn't this wonderful? God sent this baby. And the little kid is thinking, I hate this little baby. You know, my mother doesn't have time for me anymore. Everybody's giving this baby presents. Who cares about this baby? And it's wonderful. You have a little poem like this, and then a kid doesn't feel like it's a freak.
Again, doesn't...
Yeah, it's able to, the little boy or girl is able to say, that's how I feel. It's okay.
Well, kids keep secrets.
Yes,
I mean, as I was saying,
right.
I don't think I ever, until this day, said to anybody, I have a crush on Margaret O'Brien. Certainly my mother, she's watching, didn't know it, or my father, whatever.
Right.
You know, because you do keep these little secrets.
Exactly.
And this is a way to identify the secrets in lots of other people.
And to see your bond, in other words, that even makes this kid a member of the family of this little child who's jealous of the other little kid, because he knows he's not alone. There's another wonderful poem that Shel Silverstein wrote, who's just the most wonderful children's writer. It's called The Little Boy and the Old Man. And it really shows a child how much alike he is to his grandparent. I love this. Said the little boy, sometimes I drop my spoon. Said the little old man, I do that too. The little boy whispered, I wet my pants. I do that too, laughed the little old man. Said the little boy, I often cry. The old man nodded, so do I. But worst of all, said the boy, it seems grown-ups don't pay attention to me. And he felt the warmth of a wrinkled old hand. I know what you mean, said the little old man.
In the Family Circle article, I don't know if it's this month or last month, of all the different people you could have quoted on love, you quoted Richard Burton saying love is the highest form of tolerance.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that quote?
Because it was so stunning to me. He was on the David Frost show years ago when he was in the heat of the Elizabeth Taylor affair. And David Frost asked this romantic idol, what is your definition of love? You know, like, I mean, I was frozen to the set. I was dying to know what he was going to say, some sexy, passionate thing. And he said, love is the highest form of tolerance. You know, and it was so stunning. He said, because even if your child murders somebody, you may despise the act, but you still love your child. And it was so astounding to me that that is true. Love is unconditional. You don't say, I love you if.
Well, lots of people do, and that's when you start.
But that isn't
or
love.
I would love you more if you would, or you should be like this, and then I would love you.
But the truth of it is, that isn't love, because love is unconditional. You know, the mother who says, you know, I love my son and he couldn't have done that, and all those cliches that we've seen in all those prison movies. That's the truth of that feeling. If you really love somebody, and that's what we're supposed to say to children, that's a very bad thing you did, not you're a bad boy. You know, you did a very bad thing there, but not, you know, you're bad and wipe you out. And it's a very important thing. Even I notice it with my husband. I try very hard.
You say, Phil, you're a very bad boy.
No, but I try not to say, you did this to me, or you're, you know, you. Yeah, just to say, you know, this kind of hurts my feelings, or this is, I don't think this is a good way for us to operate, but not about you, because it makes people feel like you don't love them.
You see that finger going out, you know,
because mothers do that.
I know they do.
You know, and I just,
sometimes.
You've got to stop doing that.
Why don't we take a break? We'll come back, and I will dive into the audience and hopefully come up with some good questions for Marlo. All right? We'll be right back. Our guest continues to be Marlo Thomas in the audience now. Hi, what's your name, ma'am?
Florette.
Florette, nice name. What's your question?
My question is, Marla, I know you're considered a leader of the women's movement. Where do you see it going? Where do you see it forging ahead to?
Well, I think it's time for us to start running things. I think up until now, we've been fighting to get into the marketplace. We're kind of stuck at middle management. We aren't running any of the Fortune 500 companies. We're not running the networks, the movie studios, any of the big businesses. We're certainly not running anything in Detroit. We're not running anything, and I think that's where we have to get. And not until this generation dies out and the younger blood comes up will we start to really, you know, coexist at the top.
When do you think? The year 2000?
Well, surely by then, I would say.
I would think.
Yeah. We need a generation.
Yeah,
you know?
it is a generation.
But I think the wonderful thing that's happening in this generation is that boys and girls are seeing Jane Pauley and Diane Sawyer and report the news. You know, it's a different, it's not just a male world, and that's very important.
Here's Doreen from Tom's River on the phone. Hello, Doreen.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Marlo.
Hi.
Listen, I just wanted to say I'm a really big fan of yours, and my question is, do you have any plans for writing a book about your own life? You really inspire me with your ideas, and I just thought that it would be really interesting if you could write a book about your thoughts and experiences.
Well, thank you. I've been asked to do that. I'm kind of a private person, and I'm not sure it's possible to be a private person and write about your life. I have to see. Maybe when I'm Katharine Hepburn's age. She just did it.
We have a couple of questions from Youth of America over here. You do, right? I stand up. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, going into show business, was that the result of wanting to go into your father's follow his footsteps?
I'm not sure I wanted to follow in his footsteps. In fact, following in your father's footsteps is a treacherous journey. But I just got such a great love of performing and entertaining and hearing people laugh and being in communication with people because of my father, because of being around him. And I never saw him happier than when he was on stage. He was always talking at home about, oh, I have to go back on the road, and poor Daddy has to work so hard. And then we'd go see him in Las Vegas, and his eyes were always shining, and he looked like he'd, visited Nirvana, So we really got a great inspiration from him about working and enjoying
But you knew
it.
that you didn't want to follow in your mother's footsteps.
No, I knew that.
That's for certain.
My mother
Yeah,
would
it's a
have killed
question
me
over
had
here.
I followed in her footsteps.
I'm Nancy. How many stepchildren do you have at home?
Well, I have 5 stepchildren, and the last one graduated from college this year.
grown.
And so when I came into the family, the youngest was 11. And I thought when they graduated from college, of course, that they'd be gone, but they're not gone. They come back. They're
Boomerang
back.
kids.
They're all back.
Marlo, what was that like? All of a sudden, married to Phil, the responsibility of being a stepmother.
Yes.
What did it feel like in the first couple of months?
Well, it was just terrifying. I mean, I would just lock myself in my bathroom and talk to myself and say, are you crazy? What have you done? I mean, my
And were they
God.
outside
All
pounding on the
these
door saying,
people.
"You can't
It was like,
hide
those
from us"?
little birds in the nest go, they needed so many things from me. I thought I would go insane. But then after a while, I realized how much I needed to be needed. Obviously, there was something operating there. They wanted a mother, and I think I wanted a mother.
But did you have in the early months like a feeling like this is what it must have been like for my mother? I can't handle this. I'm
Oh, yes.
like shadows of that.
Well, it's interesting. I started to understand my mother better. Started to understand the conflict better. Being married made me understand my mother more. It's easy to say, I won't give up anything for my marriage. And then you get married and you realize, oh, I can't do this. This is not good for my marriage. Or I really should go with him on this because he needs me there. And you find yourself very torn. I mean, the term conflict of desires belongs to the married woman. I mean, it's just very difficult. Because it's not just that somebody's insisting. It's your own desire to be a loving and good wife that makes it.
Gentleman here with a question. Hi, sir.
Hi, my name is Fred.
Hi, Fred.
You are a very beautiful woman, more
Thank
so
you.
than they portray you.
Well, thank
Wait,
you.
Mike, who is this they? I think you should find out who
Who's
the
portraying
they is
me?
and take
Who
care
is
of those
portraying
people.
me?
That's a nice comment, Fred. What's
Thank
your
you.
question?
Lost
At
my
what
microphone.
point in your life did you get to understand why your father was away all the time?
Well, my mother and father were both very good at explaining things to us, which is why I think I am such a communicator of ideas, because my parents always would sit down with us and say, my father would sit down and say, now, Daddy has to go away on the road, and you know that Daddy loves you and wants to, thank you so much, and that Daddy wants to be home, but I have to go on the road and be away from you. And he would, tell us in very touching terms why he had to go away. And he'd usually leave me sobbing. And my mother would say, oh, for God's sake, leave that child alone. She understands that you have to go away, He so wanted us to understand that he wasn't going by choice and abandoning us, because he was is a very loving father.
Did you find yourself ever kind of jealous of his family on TV?
Oh,
like
yes.
he's spending more time with little Rusty than you?
Yes, and that he was singing Daddy's Little Girl. That was the thing that always
To
got
somebody
me.
else.
I was very upset about that.
Here's a gentleman here. Yes, sir. Stand up. Hello.
Frank Callum from Springfield. Are any of the children interested in going into show business?
Well, Jimmy played the drums for a while, and we thought we were going to have a drummer in the family. We had a drummer in the family for 7 years, I'll tell you that, right next door to my bedroom. But no, Mary Rose works for Associated Press. She's following in her father's footsteps. She works for Associated Press in Indianapolis, and she's very good, a very good writer. But the other children, no. They're in broadcasting, selling broadcasting time. One of them is in sports management. But not show business.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what's
Yes.
the possibility that either you or Phil, or both of you, will go into elected politics?
Well, I don't think I ever will. I mean, I don't have any desire
No,
to.
you have no
No,
desire.
I really love being an actress. I think Phil says at this point in his life, no, but he's so interested in social issues. I don't know anybody more informed than he is. He is so well informed, and he cares so
So you
much.
say there is a possibility
I
that...
think there might be for him. He says no now, but he's terribly
But
interested.
everybody who's running for office always says no now. You know, they always say that.
Yeah,
you
well, I
know?
mean, he loves his show, though. He loves what he's doing.
Yeah.
You both have, you know, the greatest jobs on television. You get to talk about anything you want.
It's interesting
meet
people
wonderful
all
people
day.
like me. So
As long as
hopefully
we're
get
not
married
they.
on the air, you know.
I don't want to be they. We have Carol from Absecon on the line. Hello, Carol.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
I just wanted to say that I'm an elementary school teacher, and I've used the Free to Be You and Me in my classroom every morning to encourage the children to be individual, to be proud of their home lives, knowing that they were all very different, very varied. And my dad has a summer camp, and 150 children used to sing Free to Be You and Me
Oh,
and
how
wake
great.
up the morning.
Oh, that's great.
And I heard you read a poem the other day on an interview from your new book, and I was excited. I can't wait to go out and buy it and
Thank
use it.
you. Thanks so much. Thank you. A
Well,
lot of teachers use it in their schools.
Absolutely. I want to thank you. Here is my own note-infested copy of Marlo Thomas and Friends, Free to Be a Family.
How old is your child?
2.5 years old.
Oh, perfect.
I think this is better for like a 5-year-old.
Well, 5 to 12,
Yeah.
but it's a wonderful thing to start reading to your children. So
It is such a great
Yes.
feeling reading to him.
yeah.
I was reading
Kids
to
are
him this
so
weekend.
smart. They pick
Marlo,
up.
thank you very
Thank
much
you,
for
Bill,
being
for
here.
having me.
And now,
That's great.
in the great tradition of talk shows, let me
Yes.
tell you what we're doing next. You are leaving. You are going over
Yes,
to
I
be
know.
the final speaker
That's
of
right.
Women's Way.
Yes.
I am carrying on here
Oh, I know.
with a man who is going to teach us how to debone a chicken.
Oh.
We'll be right back after this.